I'm Ian Buxton. I'm treasurer of the local branch of the IET, which is the Anglian Coastal Local Network. I'm delighted to introduce Peter Frost here. He's worked in the EV sector for an awful long time, been within the motor trade. He's now the Environmental Strategy Officer at Suffolk County Council. He has experience of what's involved in a traditional certainty, cars, I guess, in society is challenged by the way of new thinking. Every aspect of how we generate news energy is in the process of disruption as the new paradigms of technology alters our lives. And what he's going to talk about is saying there's a bigger revolution coming than just cars. So when Peter kindly agreed to do this talk, he titled it "The Future is Arriving." I cheekily added the words, even in Suffolk, reflecting perhaps the more rural nature of the county and whether you can get fast broadband or even a mobile signal in some parts of the county. But I'm sure Peter will be able to convince you that the future is arriving, especially in Suffolk. So Peter, over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you everyone for coming along today, and it's a tremendous honour for me to speak to you. As Ian mentioned, I'm Environment Strategy Officer at Suffolk County Council. You might wonder what an Environment Strategy Officer does. Well, I'm actually part of a very dedicated team on the Environment Department. We're trying to nudge our society or help our society prepare for a low carbon future. My actual specific role is I lead on a project called the Carbon Charter, which is a network of businesses that are working very actively to reduce their carbon footprint. And it's actually recently won an award, a UK award, in recognition of the good work that we're doing here in Suffolk. So even or especially, Suffolk does lead the UK in several ways. So I'm going to talk about that this evening. So the thing that I want to get across really is the future is arriving, and what a lot of people don't realise is it's the speed of change that's accelerating. So I'll talk about how things change over time in a moment, but basically, if you take AI art, for instance, a year ago or so, you couldn't get anything very useful out of AI art. Now, you just type in a few prompt words and it comes up with pretty much the picture you wanted. This is one I used a few prompt words, imagining what it would be like if nothing ever actually changed, if the technology we were with at the time was the only sort of way forwards into the future. So you can see here this couple, they don't have a big flat screen telly, they've got a black and white telly, but they're sitting closer to it so they can see a bigger picture. So that's how that's evolved. If you look out of their window, you can see they've got a super high-tech, long-range steam engine going by outside. And the mobile phone they have, you can see that's actually a landline with a very long cord. So, so it's best not to bet against the future because things keep coming and shaking up what we take for granted. And the example I'd use of this, of trends, was I was working at an electronics company, a company called Screen Electronics over at Clayton, back in the mid-80s. Back then, we had state-of-the-art computers, one of which was an IBM PCXT. Getting on for $4,000, it says dollars there. I did look up the price because I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Back in 1985, that was state-of-the-art. Fast forward 30 years, and a magazine you could go in WH Smith and buy gave that computer away for free on the front of the magazine. That's how that technology had moved on. That's the concept of ephemeralization. So something that's very expensive and complicated and new and novel at one point can actually evolve to be much more accepted and mainstream over time. And to be fair, 30 years, I like that because that was a nice gentle slope. What we're finding now is new technologies are coming out and they're shaking up our society within a couple of years. And artificial intelligence is is a good example of that. So a bit about my background. As was mentioned, I was 26 years in the motor trade. Absolutely loved it because I've always been into technology. And the new technology that was coming out at the time I worked for Toyota, they were building small cars, whereas like the Yaris in 1999 Prior to that, small cars were just big cars, but they made the measurements smaller, so it was just a very compact car. The Yaris was unique because it was built from the ground up to be a small car. So it had a very short bonnet with a compact engine in it, 1 litre, with variable valve timing. So that was a new thing back then, and that made it much more efficient. Instead of a dashboard you're sitting up close to, it had a 3-dimensional holographic readout for the speed display. So it was all little things like that that they thought of. I really enjoyed that. A few years later, they came out with the British-built Carina E, and the unique thing about that, it had a lean burn engine. Again, a big advance in engine technology. They then came out with the Mark I Prius, which was actually introducing electricity into it. An incredibly economical vehicle to drive around in, because when you're in town or you're accelerating, the petrol engine was being helped by an electric motor. It made it incredibly efficient. And then there was a massive squeaking of brakes as Toyota thought, oh no, things are getting too good for the consumer. We need to stop this. So they banged the brakes on that. And they didn't go on to the next logical step, which was electric cars. And they started to put their money behind hydrogen as the passenger car of the future. The interesting thing I find is that a lot of these little changes that come along, they seem to have a small effect at the time, but they do lead on to a massive change in our society. And I then worked for Renault under a chap called Carlos Ghosn. He was a brilliant visionary. He really was steering that alliance towards a brighter future. I was there at the launch of the Twizy, which was a little four-wheel quadricycle. Great fun to drive, not very practical for the UK weather. But I was also there for the launch of the Zoe, which was absolutely amazing because it was, to my mind, I know the Nissan Leaf came out, the Tesla Roadster was out as well. So the Zoe wasn't the very first, but it was my first experience of something that was literally a paradigm change. There was no petrol being burnt to drive that along. So the time is right for electric cars, he said. In fact, the time is critical. And if you want to hear what happened to Carlos Ghosn, it really does read like the script from a movie, how he got displaced from head of the Renault-Nissan Alliance. So that was my time there. Now, my actual job at the council is on the environment team is, as I mentioned earlier, nudging society towards the low carbon future. And there's a number of things that the council can do. First thing I've mentioned is the council is not infinitely powerful, so it can't change everything, instantly. But we do a lot of good work with the people of Suffolk, and things are coming forwards in Suffolk very, very well. We have things like Solar Together Suffolk, which is a group buying scheme to enable people to have solar panels at a very reasonable price. We've got Suffolk Recycles, which leads the country in the way that we deal with recycling. So we have no rubbish goes to landfill in Suffolk. So we're leading the way. Reclaim the rain. Obviously, we have some very extreme weather conditions in Suffolk. In fact, we're not a very well blessed with rainfall county, but sometimes it comes all at once. We also have other ones, lots more, warm homes, healthy people. There's others I could mention. But we are doing a lot of work on that. But the one I would focus on today, the big change that we're enabling is the switch to electric vehicles. Now, the first thing I'd say is electric vehicles in every single scientific peer-reviewed study are shown to be better for the environment over their lifetime. So the debate about are electric vehicles better or not is over. They are definitely better. And the way we look on it is public transport, cycling, walking, they're the best way to move about. But if you've got to drive, we'd rather people drove electric vehicles. And it's an interesting situation that now we're finding with the market, and I'll come to that in a little while, the market is really taking off for the electric cars. Now, one of the ways we try to encourage that, because obviously we're quite a rural area, so while the towns might be very well blessed with public charging infrastructure. Out in the rural areas, in the smaller villages, there isn't a lot of possibility of getting electric vehicle charging in there. So we actually led the country for a open access, county-wide destination charging network. And this was the technology that we used at the time, very straightforward. The project was called Plug in Suffolk, and we were able to put these chargers out in rural locations, small villages. Maybe some of you know of where there may be some, and that enables the local community to have right in front of them, right in the center of their community, they can see electric vehicle charging, public charging is possible. So two of the things that it led with that they said couldn't be done was it was open access. So at the time, it was an access card or a key fob. You had to wait to come through the post to use a public charger. It's now mostly moved over to apps. But the idea of Plug in Suffolk was you could do all of those things, or you could just tap your contactless credit card. So it was completely open access. And also the unique thing about it was there was the possibility that if someone was a local resident and not able to charge at their house, at their community centre or their village hall, they could use the community charging hub and get a discounted rate as a local resident. So you weren't being quite as penalised for not being able to charge at home. And the reason we did that was we talked to electric car owners and we said, what is it you don't like about public charging? And once you look at it from the electric vehicle driver's point of view, you realise being able to rock up at a charger and just plug in and charge it's Shangri-La, really. It's marvellous compared to having to try and download an app or anything. So we began with a pilot project, and here's some of them. Shout out to Cobham Centre, Community Charging Hub. There's also Raydon, over near Southwold, Elmswell. They just a few of them. We ended up with 100 sockets at 32 locations around the country, and we gained the attention of the government. So these are the locations of the pilot scheme where we rolled out the chargers across the county. And again, this was unheard of. If you actually look at the A14 corridor, you can see these charging hubs are away from that. They're out in the open countryside, showing that we're leaving no one behind. So that was the idea behind it. And as I say, it got the attention of the government, and we were then awarded a lot of funding by the government to accelerate that scheme and to roll forwards with that. Not just the community charging hubs, but also on-street charging. We've also got funding for supporting the rollout of rapid charging hubs, and also things like car clubs as well. So maybe if someone hasn't experienced an electric car, or maybe they have one car in the family and occasionally they need two, rather than having two cars, you can utilize a car club. So that's coming soon in Suffolk. So these are all the different schemes that we're doing from that. And Suffolk itself has actually got an infrastructure strategy that's going to take it through to 2028, when we're going to have completed this whole transformation of the county. We're also very dependent on tourism in Suffolk, so it's nice to know if anybody does come here, they can relax and be reassured that they can get charged wherever they go in the county. So we're also working hard as part of this. We aren't leaving other forms behind, so we're also working on public transport and other forms of travel as well. So worth mentioning. And we're already in the process of transforming the public charging network across the county. We've got rapid charging hubs along the arterial routes. If you take Ipswich as an example, all the main routes in and out of Ipswich have all got rapid charging hubs on them. So at Worsted, there's one, at Martlesham, Copdock, over near Asda on the White House estate, there's one. All the major routes are covered. So if you do live in the town and you have an electric car and you have to make a journey, a longer journey, or you have to do a longer journey quickly, you've got somewhere you can pull in. and top up. So by doing these things, we're reassuring people that it's safe to make the switch over to electric cars. We're trying to make range anxiety a thing of the past. The other thing to remember about electric cars is a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people can actually charge them at home. And if that's the case, that's where they tend to do most of their charging. So if you're fortunate enough to have solar panels, for instance, you can put some of that free electricity you're getting onto your roof straight into your car. So because of those aspects, it's not a like-for-like replacement. Just because you have a petrol station somewhere, it doesn't mean the same number of people are going to be filling up their electric car at somewhere like that. A lot of electric car charging takes place at home. And the state of charge is changing. There's a lot of things people don't realize. If you compare the increasing in electric car public charge points compared to the decreasing number of petrol forecourts there are, and a lot of that is because of the migration to supermarket petrol stations, but out in the rural areas, like I just mentioned, a lot of the local petrol forecourts have shut down, and that trend is going to go on. So a lot of people don't realize that as electric vehicles take over, you might find yourself in the situation whereby you have to drive further and further to get filled up with petrol. It's gradually going to fade into the background as a legacy technology. And the electric vehicle market is growing tremendously. You might hear in the press about how it's stalled or it's reducing. It's not. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders actually they published, this is their most recent published October. It's up 14%, and so they predict that this year it's going to be just under 19% market share, and it's going to be 23.4% market share next year. So that is a growing acceleration of the uptake of electric vehicles. And yeah, it's very interesting to see other businesses like the Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association. They show that the uptake of electric cars is tremendously fast. And out there on the roads right now, there's well over 1 million people driving around in electric cars. So once you get over 1 million people, that's not early adoption. That is a growing market share and a clear trend into the future. And alongside that, as I mentioned, all of the different kinds of public charging infrastructure are increasing as well. But that's nothing on what's going to happen next, because there's new technologies coming out that are going to come along beside the electric car that are really going to transform our lives. One of which you may have heard of, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, or it's just generally coming under the title of vehicle to X, where the massive battery that you have in an electric car can actually be utilized for other things. It doesn't just have to be for powering the car along. You can actually feed power into a house or into a building and utilize that. The government are actually getting behind this. It's called the Vehicle to Everything Innovation Program. And they're going to address the barriers to enable this technology. And it's going to become mainstream, because after a little while, people are going to cotton on to the fact that if you're fortunate enough to have a car parked outside your house, why are you paying the top rate for electricity during peak times? You've got all that electricity sitting in your car. You could take a small amount of that to power your house and only buy electricity from the grid when it's at its cheapest rate. And that would be well worth looking into. So I think that's one of the things that's going to really transform the perception of the electric car transformation. The other thing that's coming along as well, a thing called ISO 15118, plug and charge, which a lot of cars such as Teslas and also Fastned now can provide this service. You don't have to tap your contactless credit card. When you pull up at a charger, you plug it into the car. The car and the charger talk to one another, and it just starts charging. It just builds your account and puts the electricity into your car. You don't have to worry about how is the payment method taking place? You've already got it all set up. And after that, you're going to get to the stage where you don't even need to plug the car in. Wireless charging, where you just pull your car over a charging pad on the road, and it'll communicate with the charging pad, and the car will agree to it, and it'll just start charging. You won't even have to plug in a cable. So there's some very, very interesting technologies that are coming along now. What you've got to watch as well as part of this, watch out for what they call peak oil, because oil eventually, and a lot of people are saying, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, for instance, are already saying that China has already peaked in its oil consumption. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on that. But there's other things that are also going to come along and transform our society. So that V2X is also going to be affected by some other things. The cost of batteries falling, but boy, is it going to start falling faster soon, because there's new technologies coming out, such as sodium batteries. So people say about lithium being expensive, but sodium, salt, is one of the most common materials we can lay our hands on. It's going to bring the cost of batteries down tremendously faster than it's been falling so far. And I mentioned earlier about solar panels on your roof. This is a very interesting, again from Bloomberg, a very interesting graph showing how the price of solar panels has been falling over time. But there's new materials coming out that not only are going to make them lower cost still, but actually make them more efficient. So you're going to have perovskites, which are materials that can be integrated into the solar panel. And you also have a hybrid solar panel, which has two different materials, which absorb two different frequencies of the sunlight. So, so that becomes more efficient still. So these things, the cost of the technology and its efficiency and the way it works, all improving, is going to make a tremendous difference on our society. Some other tech to look out for as well, which is going to go hand in hand with all of these things I'm talking about. There's much more lower cost electric cars coming along. There's also a growing used vehicle market for electric cars as well, because what people are finding is the batteries are lasting much, much longer than was originally predicted. So they make a very good proposition second hand. But new models are coming out, new compact models from China, coming along so low priced that they're talking about tariffs to maintain an equivalence with the Western production cars. But to go back to my home territory at Renault bringing out a very reasonably priced new version of the Renault 5, which is purely electric. They've also brought out the Dacia Spring. It's 14,995, which is lower priced than a lot of petrol cars. So a lot of people don't realize that they're getting down to that sort of money. That's a lot of money for someone if they're just looking for a cheaper car, but this is all going to have a knock-on effect on the used vehicle market. So there are going to be some bargains to be had. That's cars. There's also trucks, and I apologize to Adnams. Myself and Benedict, who was at Adnams at the time, we had a laugh about my Photoshop skills, but there's a Tesla Semi transporting Ghost Ship, zero emissions. There's trucking is going to be a real eye-opener in the near future. And there's other things. Aircraft. I actually had the conversation with someone that, oh yeah, electric cars are all well and good. You'll never get an electric aircraft. Well, last year I rode in an electric aircraft and it was very nice, very pleasant, very smooth, quiet and enjoyable. So that was very interesting. Robotics as well. I put the picture, I was amazed when I found out that Amazon was using this humanoid robot called Digit to work in its fulfillment centers, its distribution centers. But since I put that up, it makes Digit look very, very old-fashioned, some of the new humanoid robots that are coming out now. They are amazingly capable and advanced. So all these things are going to change things. So just to reiterate, if you want to know a good Christmas present for someone, for that person who's hard to buy for, why don't you you can actually charter just a quick flight around Norwich Airport, looking down on it, beautiful scenery, in an electric aircraft. And that's for those people who said it could never happen. It was very pleasant. And the interesting thing, Saxon Air are actually a carbon charter member, and they were faced with the prospect, being a charter airline. They began by thinking maybe there isn't very much we can do about our carbon impacts. But in fact, when they put their mind to it, it's amazing what good work they've done. And now all of their initial pilot training is all done in electric aircraft. It's just one of the aspects that they've grasped to reduce their impact on the environment and show what can be done. But they're not alone. They're not the only one. There's another company called Harbour Air who've been running seaplanes around Vancouver Harbour for quite a while. And we're going to see more and more electric aircraft, even vertical takeoff electric air taxis coming up soon. So that's all happening. But it's not just aircraft. I remember very vividly being told that you'll never get electric heavy duty trucks. I was fortunate to be at Bacton Transport, who were near Stowmarket earlier in the year, where they had a demonstration of the Volvo there. This is a Volvo truck. We've also had another Volvo truck at our Carbon Charter Summer event, which was kindly hosted by the Coddenham Centre. And it was amazing as people arrived at the event to walk past this massive lorry, this huge, great lorry, and realise that drives down the road without emitting any diesel fumes. So that's the kind of ideas that you've got to get over. They've done a lot. They've obviously got Volvos at Bacton Transport already, and they've got all of the telematics that are recorded. And they realise that there's a lot of the routes that they do could be done by electric trucks right now. The pallet runs, the shorter range routes, they could all be done. So they are seriously looking at how quickly they can integrate this into their fleet. It's a very, very interesting time to be involved in these things. So those are those are all of the new technologies that are coming along, all well and good. But there are other new technologies as well. You may not be aware of how fast artificial intelligence is evolving. There's a lot of hyperbole around it, but it's definitely evolving quickly. And so the world next year is going to be very different to the artificial intelligence level of technology from last year. But it needs to be integrated into our society correctly. It's already coming in. It's already being used in a lot of areas. If it's not introduced properly, it could cause serious problems with our society. But it also has the potential to do a lot of good. And I'll mention more about that in a moment. But yeah, it has to be introduced properly. So then as we stand at the moment, we have artificial intelligence, which is programmed for human type actions. But the next stage is going to be artificial general intelligence. Now that's going to be able to teach itself. But the next step beyond that, artificial superintelligence, it's also known as the singularity. Now it's a phrase taken from astronomy when they're talking about a black hole. And the reason artificial superintelligence is thought of as like a singularity is beyond the event horizon of a black hole, we don't know what's there. We don't know what's there because we can't get information back from there. And the singularity after the arrival of artificial superintelligence is also like that. It's a big unknown. It's very difficult to predict it. So even now, as I mentioned earlier, Amazon have got Digit working in their factories. The IMF recently published a report suggesting that 40% of jobs could be revolutionized by the introduction of AI. Some jobs are going to be hit negatively in that human workers are going to be put out. Some jobs are going to be impacted positively. There's a thing called complementarity, where you can work alongside artificial intelligence to do your job better. There are a lot of challenges coming up, and how we introduce artificial intelligence, I think, is one of the most important ones. But again, it's not the only one. There's a lot of challenges at the moment. One thing I would say is I made this as a tsunami of change. These are all of the things that individually have the ability to shake up our society, make a big change to our future. Some of them good. In the background, there's anarchy and war. There's others on here like total environmental collapse, post-democracy, obscene inequality, things like that. They're all putting negative forces on our society. But there's others that are putting positive ones on. So vertical farming, precision fermentation, additive manufacturing, these are all things that could make our society much better in the future. One thing I would mention, I can quote from a personal hero of mine, Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer. 50 years ago, in the 70s, he said, he predicted the age of cheap power is over, the age of free power is still 50 years away. That was really interesting because it's now 50 years since that. And it still amazes me the way that power is integrated into our society, how it's changing. So energy that we use isn't some will-o'-the-wisp thing you have to hunt down. It's not a rarity. You don't have to send out search parties with butterfly nets to track down energy. Energy is all around us. It's estimated that in 2 minutes, enough solar energy, collectible solar energy, hits us from the sun, hits the earth from the sun, to power our entire civilization for the entire year. You know, when you've got that kind of availability of energy, the fact that we're not collecting it, we're not storing it, we're not using it properly, that's not energy's fault, that's down to us. So we need to have a good old rethink of how we deal with this, which is, I think, why, with the falling cost of batteries, the falling cost of solar panels, we're going to see a tremendous transformation of our energy system. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see that. That's nanotechnology. It's probably a bit too small to see. So the power to shape the future is in our hands, and we can look to visionaries to give us some guidance on it. We have to make some decisions ourselves. There's an organization called Rethink X, which is headed by a chap called Tony Sieber. Now, I remember back in 2014, he made a speech about clean disruption leading to superabundance. And that was mostly focused on the electric car, but included other things as well. That is a tremendously interesting think tank, Rethink X, how they're looking to how these changes could lead to a better future for us all. And if I can, down at the bottom there, if I can just quote from the French philosopher Anna Lappé, when she said about the emergence of the environmentally conscious consumer, every time you buy something, you're casting a vote on the kind of future you want. It's a very important message because we do all have the power to affect our own future. And finally, ending on artificial intelligence, I typed in about a city of the future. So you can see here, one city of the future where it's not very pleasant, where we don't want to end up. That's the dystopian one. And a much nicer equivalent one where we can spend time with our families and enjoy the sunshine and a bright future for everyone. So the decision, the fork in the road to make the decisions that lead us towards each one of those two possible futures is with us. And so that's quite an important aspect, I think, of the whole concept. Which leads me to the end. I would just mention a very interesting website from my own vested interest to encourage people to look at this. Carboncharter.org has a lot of information on there about mostly about businesses, but a lot of it can be applied in other areas as well. There's also an events page on there, so do keep an eye on the events page, because next July there's going to be an electric vehicle experience event at Trinity Park, where they have the Suffolk show. It's a big conference centre with a big perimeter track, so people can take electric cars out and just try them around the track, just to see what they're like. But it's going to be over 2 days this time, this experience event. And the first day is going to be the big trucks is going to be there. But the second day, we're going to be aiming at things like taxis, private cars, that kind of thing. So that's going to be a really tremendous event. So that's going to be advertised on the Carbon Charter website soon. And also tomorrow, if anybody's about, we're actually having a networking event at Neutral Territory in Claydon. So you'd be very welcome to join us there if you wished. All of the details are on the website. Do have a look. It's a big website, very interesting. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Peter. I'm sure that we've got some questions that will come from the audience. How do you want to start, George?
Can you ask the online audience to raise questions by chat, because the Q&A tab is not working, the app's not working on Teams.
All right. So George just said that the Q&A app or tab in the on the webinar is not working. So if you're on the webinar, please can you raise questions on chat, which is exactly the opposite of what I said at the beginning. But there you go. That's technology. But let's start with a question from the audience, if we have one. Yes, please.
One thing you haven't mentioned is heat pumps. I must admit, if you as you move towards heat pumps, what could the local council do to encourage them? And one thing I did see an article in the Economist a while ago suggesting that you can have local district heating schemes so that you can supply the heat to the house. And is that a possibility? And I certainly went to Sweden, where that seemed to have happened to the people who visited.
That's a fantastic question. So on the subject of asking about heat pumps and also local area heat networks, well, there are two things that we are working on at the council. I mentioned Solar Together Suffolk. That solar scheme now does include battery storage as well and heat pumps as well. So you get all of the advice on that if you want to take part in that. But yes, we are trying to encourage people to move away from fossil fuels generally. And if a lot of people are finding out how good it is to have a heat pump, because for once you're not burning anything.
So I don't know if you're aware, there's a company in Sudbury that's running a local heat scheme, isn't it, Kevin? That the one in Sudbury that we were going to have a visit to.
It's Chiltern Homes, I think.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's fantastic to see them springing up across the county. And there's even in the Carbon Charter, we've got various companies that actually take part in that kind of thing. So yeah.
So just as a supplementary question of that, how does Suffolk County Council help, to push those kind of ideas forward, particularly on heat pumps?
I mean, a lot of people are concerned when they're thinking about upgrading aspects of their homes, such as getting solar panels, getting battery storage, and getting heat pumps. That they're going to be bombarded with pushy salespeople and that kind of thing, and they're not going to be getting the best deal. So by running what is basically a group buying scheme like Solar Together Suffolk, what that does is that removes all of those concerns. So yeah, that's one of the things. That's the scheme we're running specifically to encourage people to look into this and reassure them that if they go along with this scheme, they are getting a very good deal indeed.
George?
I've got one question from Syed Haider online, and he asks what technology is used for the car chargers to connect to the network. And I assume that is to the electricity distribution network. How is that done?
Right, okay, well the scheme I was under, that's a good question. The scheme I was working on, Plug-in Suffolk, actually that was destination charging. So in fact there was usually enough spare capacity at the site to actually supply a couple of electric vehicle chargers. So that was how we were able to roll them out at a very reasonable price on those. But obviously the private sector is involved with the rollout and connections with the national grid for rapid charging hubs that obviously require a lot more power. So those are ongoing as well. The actual, I don't know if the other aspect of it may be that the connecting when you're paying with your contactless credit card, a lot of the places that maybe are outside of Wi-Fi areas can connect via the internet. So we make sure there's a very robust connection before we ask people to plug in and get some charge.
Can I just ask a supplementary again?
Mm-hmm.
But what's the power output of the chargers that you're putting in these local positions?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's two different networks for public car charging. One main one is the rapid charging hubs, which are on main routes when you're on your way from A to B and you have to stop off halfway and get a good charge as quickly as possible. That's the rapid charging network. But the other one, the destination charging network, is slightly different. The idea there is you're going to go somewhere and park anyway. So when you're there, you're getting a charge conveniently while you're off doing something else. So it doesn't need to be so fast. So the destination charging network tends to be AC connections, and it tends to be 7 or slightly more than that, maybe 11 or 22 kilowatts. But then when you're en route somewhere and you want to stop off as short an amount of time as possible, then they tend to be much faster. So 50 kilowatts and above of the DC rapid charging network. So those two networks aren't exclusive. You'll find, and I can certainly speak from experience, as an EV driver, you tend to, if you are traveling out and about, you are having to charge, you want access to both of those networks because they work in support with one another. They work in conjunction to make sure you can get a charge on your journey during the day.
Can I ask a supplementary on that one? So if you're parking overnight and there's only a handful of points you can connect into, doesn't that then mean that when you arrive and you're the nth plus one car, then there's no option for you to charge in that period? Even though it's your destination charging.
Yes, so the advantage of rolling out so many more chargers across the county, the idea behind that is that if you rock up at a charger and they're all in use, or somebody's reversed a lorry into them or something, there's some reason why you can't charge at a particular charger. There should be one reasonably nearby, so you're not too inconvenienced by not being able to charge there. And obviously, we can't cover every single possible permutation of event, but by rolling out so many chargers across the county, you can either stop briefly at a rapid charger and top up, or if you're parked somewhere anyway, you can get charged there. And if they're all already in use, there's somewhere else nearby that you can also get charged at. So that's what the idea behind rolling out so many chargers across the county.
Okay, yes, Steve?
Hello. I just wondered what the council thinks its remit is in terms of persuasion, because I'm thinking the chargers is offering a facility. You could do something like cheaper parking for EVs where you're reducing revenue. You could try and persuade people that building nuclear power stations or onshoring wind farm cables in their area is actually a good thing for the rest of the country. Where do you see the remit of the council on that nudging?
Yes, and it is nudging. We don't, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have infinite power, so we can't wave our hand and make things happen. Having said that, we think very carefully when these plans are being put together. There's a lot of thought that goes into them, a lot of consultancy, and a lot of liaising with the public themselves and asking them. So things like nuclear power stations, things like onshore wind, they all have to be taken in balance. We want a society that is switching away from fossil fuels, but we also want a really nice society that we're part of and we can enjoy living in.
But would the council get into that essentially political debate, or do you tend not to politicize that?
Not at my level. I mean, if you're talking about nuclear power, that is a political decision. That's not. I'm
thinking about the people who live there and whether the council is trying to nudge views, because there's a lot of resistance to electrifying our economy.
Yeah, and the benefits that we look forward to from it is a better world for us with less pollution, cleaner air, cleaner water, a nicer environment to live in for us and future generations as well. And it's always tricky, but we think we're moving forwards in the right way. So by consulting with the public and encouraging them to come along, and it's moving forwards very well. As I say, there are various aspects. Team Suffolk is leading the way, so it's still a good.
George, is there another one online?
There's no more, so I'll ask one if that's okay.
Okay.
Right. So Peter, your talk's been very much about about electric vehicles and the things that they can do. But I mean, our carbon footprints are much broader based than that. The electric vehicles really down to our travelling. What support do you provide to Suffolk folks to help them to understand how they can change the broader lifestyle aspects of the way they go about things to improve their carbon footprint and to see the benefits of that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, transport is just one of them, which is why we have a website called Way to Go Suffolk, which encourages people to travel in the most sustainable way. We also, I mentioned my own project that I'm leading on, the Carbon Charter, which is trying to move the industrial sector over, the tourism sector over to lower carbon. So there are many ways that the council can help with this and can encourage various choices. The good thing is we are finding things are improving tremendously in Suffolk. So it's a good news story on that front. But there's still a long way to go before we've completely decarbonised our society.
How do you measure that?
Well, there are various key performance indicators that are looked at, both by, on my side, we have accreditation scheme for businesses, for instance, whereby you can get bronze, silver or gold, depending on how much your small and medium enterprises manage to reduce its carbon footprint, how much good work you're doing to bring your supply chain and your customer base along on that journey. So there are various things we can do, definitely. We've got the various schemes, and we find that they're very popular. So things like Solar Together Suffolk, it grows each time we run that scheme. There's more people taking it up than there were previously. And we've also encouraged people to insulate their homes as well, so we can provide advice, support for that kind of thing. So warm homes, healthy people, it's a win-win.
Okay. Well, I'll come back to you, Steve. Mark.
Yeah, the solar Suffolk scheme, I did have those round, and they took one look at my house, and he said, no, not yet, because the design of the house is wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And he was explaining that solar panels have now got very big. So I think they've doubled in physical size to make them more efficient than they were previously. I think. Does that sound right to you? Yeah. And the problem is that we've got lots of houses like mine, which have got windows in the roof, for example, that have got slates. And he said, you're just not going to fit it to that house. Now, there's going to be a lot of people who have got inappropriate houses. We can't stick solar panels on them. And he said, well, soon, but we don't know how long soon is, you might be able to put a film on your windows and that might help, okay? But so we've got an issue with retrofitting, I think. I'd be interested in your opinion on that. But also, a drive past Felixstowe, there's hundreds of houses being put up. I would have thought, is it not the council's responsibility now to say to the builders, put solar panels on every roof, make every roof compatible with solar panels? Because that doesn't seem to be happening at the moment.
Right, that's really interesting. And if I can just rewind back to what I mentioned about ephemeralization, about how things, when they start, they're not ideal, but over time things improve. And I can remember my house that I have couldn't have solar panels on because it didn't have a south-facing roof. And they said, oh no, you don't want that, mate. No, that's not going to work. It's got an east-west roof. And then the solar panel technology improved. We've now got solar panels east-west, and it works really well. And as I was mentioning earlier, the new generations of solar panel are coming out. They're going to be even more efficient still. I'm absolutely amazed that windows in your roof are stopping you having solar panels, because I've got windows in my roof and they just put them around it. In fact, as you drive around, you might well see houses with solar panels with,
There just wasn't some, it's not windows, it's the,
dormers, yeah.
And what he said was that there's not a big enough, you might get one, you might get two if you were lucky. Because they're bigger now, there isn't room for them to fit on the roof. That's the issue. And we tried, well, what about east-west? Because I said exactly that. Can you put them on, a flat wall that is facing east or west? Because that you need electricity all day, not just when the sun's a bit peak on the south. But again, there didn't seem to be
No.
the technology currently
Right.
to address that.
I'm very surprised that there's no way of doing anything. But having said that, I don't know if anyone's seen the roof tiles that are actually solar panels built into the roof tiles. That's going to come along in the near future and be much more mass produced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue with those is they are not replacement, because I went down this route as well.
Did you?
Yeah, and the slate is this size.
Mm.
Yeah, a solar slate is 4 slates or 6 slates joined together. So you've got to have, it's not a 1-for-1 replacement of a slate, it's a 1-for-1 replacement of a run of 4 slates or 6 slates.
Right.
So again, if you've got door or windows in the roof, there's not enough.
It's not going to be practical. No, it's very unfortunate. It's not going to work in every single situation at the moment. Hopefully there will be a technology that comes out that does answer that. But you know, it's not going to work everywhere. The good news is, as we run Solar Together Suffolk, as I mentioned, that it's growing. Each time we run that scheme, more people apply for it. And you're absolutely right to ask about the new builds as well. That's quite a valid question. Yeah, in an ideal world, we'd have every single new house built with solar panels on the roof and battery storage already built in, because it's never better value than when you put it in from day one, rather than retrofitting it. Having said that, when you drive around, you know, where you mentioned where you've seen new houses, you will see some of them have solar panels. But it's a compromise. It's gradually, like I mentioned, we're gradually nudging the building industry into accepting more and more of those. So it's a gradual process, but it is overall, it's snowballing and happening faster and faster. So you will see more results very soon.
Steve, and no, Steve first, and then I'll come to you if that's all right.
Hi, Steve.
It's kind of another retro question. I guess one of the barriers for adopting EVs is folks who live with houses that have street parking. I guess one of the things with council might be involved is, how do you get your cable across the pavement? So are there any initiatives where you can control solutions for that, whether it's gutters or whatever it is? Because
yes,
feels like a practical thing we can actually
do. So in Suffolk, 80% of households have off-road parking where they can charge an EV at home quite easily. That leaves 20% of people who aren't in that fortunate situation. Now, it's a really valid question, and as part of the research that we're doing, we are running a pilot scheme about gullies under the pavement, just to see whether that's the answer. Is that the best way? What happened with Plug-in Suffolk with the community charging hubs is some of the rural villages, it's not that they don't have a place to park outside their house. They don't even have a pathway outside their house. Some of the gates open straight onto the road, and the people park at a communal parking area at the end of the street or something. That's where something like a community charging hub comes in, because people can, with the range of cars now, it's a lot further than the 60 to 80 miles. They can do some of them 200 to 300 miles. So that's, some people, that's a charge once a week, or maybe even once a fortnight for some people. So they don't have to charge every single night. So not being able to charge at home isn't a deal breaker on running an electric car, but it removes one advantage of it, but there's still all of the other advantages that go with an electric car. So they're quicker, quieter, smoother, cleaner, overall cheaper to run. What's not to love? There's lots of advantages to having an electric car. But obviously, for the people who can't charge at home off-road, we are looking into various things, be it gullies that I just mentioned, and also the Levi funding is enabling us to run out a lot of pilots of what we call on-street parking. So if someone is parked on the road, wherever they park along there, they have the opportunity to plug in, whether it's a fixed post, a build out, or even a post that comes up out of the ground. There's lots of different solutions to the inability to charge at home conundrum, and we're exploring all of them to see which one works best in what area.
Yes, that gentleman, please.
Talking about heat pumps again, can't you just ban all new houses having anything apart from a heat pump? That doesn't seem to be happening, according to the Liberal Democrat councillor I spoke to a while ago, who said you've got a large area of new build north of Ipswich, and they are constrained to putting heat pumps there. Why not?
Yes, but again, it's working in some areas, but as I mentioned earlier, at the council, we don't have infinite power. We don't have the ability to force things through in every single aspect. We can only nudge in certain directions, and we are making a lot of headway. So you've just mentioned one. There are other areas where heat pumps are going in. A lot of the retrofit houses, heat pump schemes, they're all going in gradually, bit by bit, as more and more people experience it. It's going to be, I predict it's going to be very similar to what happens with electric cars. With electric cars, now there's well over 1 million people with electric cars. Just about everyone is going to know someone with an electric car. Everyone's going to be able to ride in an electric car or hear the feedback from the owner about what they think about owning an electric car. So it stops being the big unknown and it becomes much more viable as an alternative. And having made the switch over myself, driving an electric car as my main driver back in 2013 until now, there's no way I'd switch back. It's so much nicer to have an electric car. And the same thing's going to happen with heat pumps. As more and more people get heat pumps, their neighbours are going to see that they've got heat pumps. They're going to see they've got solar panels. They see they've got battery storage. It's not going to be the big unknown. It's not the big impossibility. It actually becomes much more viable, much more practical, and much more attractive once you realise that that future, as I showed the two pictures, the future that's nudging the world towards is much more preferable.
Okay, I don't think we've got any more questions on the webinar. Is there any more questions in the audience that anybody wants to just raise?
Peter, with your experience of the motor industry and manufacturing in particular, any sort of viewpoint? I mean, on Vauxhall recently started to pull out, and this complaint from the industry that they've been driven too hard. Do you have any insight or comment based on your previous experience as to whether this is touching a few myths being thrown into?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting actually. Having been on the coal face, if you'll pardon the reverse analogy, but having been there myself, I can definitely tell you that there's a lot of vested interests mounted against the electric car that aren't always mentioned. Now, the obvious one is the oil industry. The last thing they want you to do is buy an electric car, because then you're not going to be buying petrol. You're not going to be buying diesel. A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of the motor industry as well who have a vested interest in not switching to electric cars. Because once you buy an electric car, they're never going to sell you an oil filter. They're never going to sell you spark plugs, cam belt. What's a cam belt? An electric car hasn't got a cam belt. So all of those potential revenue streams are slowly being whittled away for the mainstream industry. What I would say is, right to mention Vauxhall, who've been caught out, they haven't switched quickly enough. They haven't moved over. They haven't moved with the times. They've been caught out. And the clear indication of that, along with BMW, who recently announced that hydrogen is the future for passenger cars, it's not. The problem with those are people like China, their car industry is laughing its socks off. It's looking over at the West and saying, what are they doing? They're so entrenched in the old ways of doing things. They're being completely left behind, which is why they're having to talk about tariffs to stop cheaper imports in competition. So I was at Renault when Carlos Ghosn was in charge. The guy was a visionary. Nissan were part of his downfall in that, and he fell afoul of the Japanese arm of the alliance. Nissan are now in real big trouble. They're really having problems now, and it's because they didn't move with the times. It's this whole inability to appreciate how fast society is changing that catches people out. So it's a lesson to us all. These things that are happening, you need to be predicting the right future rather than looking back to the past all the time. So yes, that would be my definite insight there. And I don't believe that Vauxhall or BMW or all of these businesses that are having trouble because they're not switching over to the new technology quickly enough, that they're not alone. There's going to be others that are caught out in a very similar way.
Okay, I think we'll make this the last question, if that's all right.
Electric car goes 4 times as far on a kilowatt hour.
Say that again. Could you speak up a bit?
I'm sorry. An electric car does roughly 4 miles to a kilowatt hour.
Yes.
A petrol car only does 1 mile per kilowatt hour.
Yes.
Now, when we're talking in the future, our problem is we're going to have to all be getting our power from the grid, which is going to have to get a lot bigger than it is now. I think you ought to be reminding people that's a fact. One of the reasons it costs less to run an electric car.
Yes, that's a very good point. When it comes to efficiency, the electric car beats an internal combustion engine car hands down. That's before you factor in the other stresses that gathering of the oil and the pollution, all the other aspects of it put on our society. But it's much better to drive an electric vehicle, and it is a point well made that part of the reason that they are cheaper is because they are so much more efficient. And the other thing that gets me is you show a picture of a battery which is a certain size and a certain weight, and you show the same amount of power that is in the battery. You show it as petrol. It's just a small container of petrol. The difference is the battery is going to be used over and over again during its lifetime, whereas the bit of petrol that's there is burnt once and that's gone. So these efficiencies all add up. And we can also, the nice thing about an electric car is it's electricity agnostic, so it doesn't mind where the electricity comes from. So the greener the supply, and our electricity grid is becoming much greener now. It's becoming much less polluting and lower carbon. For instance, very recently, or the beginning of last month, the last coal-fired power station on the national grid closed down. It's used up all of its reserves of coal. It's shut down forever. It's shuttered. That's the end of the road for coal on the UK grid. So that was a big change then.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there for this evening. It's been very interesting to hear what Suffolk is doing, Peter. Thank you. I'd just like to thank Peter in the usual way, if we could. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before you all go, a couple of things. There's a slide up here which shows the events. Kevin is. Do you want to just run through them, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. Just take a couple of minutes just to plug our programme for 2025. I'm quite pleased that it's coming together quite nicely. In January, we should be having a talk on cyber security. February, we've got a talk on pioneering women in computing. In March, it's cloud-based video. In April, we've got the history of telecoms from Roger Ward. He's the ITP journal editor. Somdip Day is going to talk to us about AI in music in May, and Professor Andy Sutton from BT will be talking to us about point-to-point microwave in June. We have a program which is evolving. This is just a snapshot at this point in time. We're going to add more talks into that program, but I'm quite excited by the program as it stands. For more details of that, please go to the website. The link is here. That takes you to a web page with one of my photographs of Felixstowe Beach, Cobbles Point. So you get to the Angling Coastal website, and bottom right, which I've ringed here, I've highlighted, that's where you see future events. So once Ian's done the registration on +4, they'll appear. Those events will appear, so you can register and join. One or two other people have been saying it's hard to find videos of previous events. I've spent a little bit of time making some changes to the web page. You can see some quick links here. So if you want to watch one of our event videos, you can click on that. It takes you straight there. If you want a CPD certificate for this event or previous events, you can click there. And if you want more information about previous events, like a copy of the slides or indeed the video, that you can go there. So just a bit of a plug for the up and coming events. Do join in. They'll be exciting. Thanks.